Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Adam Heist, Kevin King, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today, I'm speaking with Chris Shipferling, founding partner of GW Partners and South Col, with over 20 years of experience in the consumer products sector. And we are going to be talking a lot about how you can 10x your brand and then also exit your brand. This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough Consulting, where I help 7-figure companies grow to 8 figures and beyond. Listen, Chris, I started my business back in 2015 and I grew it to an 8-figure brand in 7 years. But I made a lot of mistakes along the way that made the path of getting to 8 figures take a lot longer than it needed to. There were times where I doubted myself as a leader, whether I doubted my abilities to actually manage the cash flow in the business or whether my brand could actually become like a recognized brand in our industry. So to our listeners, those of you who have hit similar plateaus and want to know the next steps to take your brand to the next level, then go to ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's to learn more. And as a special bonus to my podcast listeners, this month I'm giving away one $10,000 comprehensive business strategy audit session at no cost. All you need to do is email me at josh@ecombreakthrough.com and in your subject line say strategy audit, and then plead your case as to why I should choose you and your business to work with for this month. And if you don't win this month, don't worry, you'll be entered to win for future months to come. But today I'm excited to introduce you all to Chris. Chris is an industry luminary with a remarkable 20-year tenure in the consumer product sector, adeptly navigating sales and marketing roles across the spectrum from small businesses to corporate giants. As a founding partner of South Col, he's played a pivotal role in shaping the e-commerce consumer products landscape through strategic investments. Joining GW Partners in 2018, Chris brought his wealth of experience to the team, previously having run his own consultancy where he crafted and executed digital strategies for business owners. Today, his passion lies in guiding founder owners to achieve their goals, leveraging his profound understanding of the consumer products arena and his expertise in digital strategy and e-commerce to drive unparalleled growth and success. And with that being said, we're going to give credit to ChatGPT for creating that intro for Chris. I would like to say that, Chris, wow, you're just a master copywriter of your bio here.
So good.
You already spilled the beans.
I did. I'm really good at prompts. That's what I'm really good at. I'm a super creative prompt writer, man.
I love it. Well,
yeah,
Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. First time on, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, Chris, super excited to dive in. You truly do have a wealth of knowledge, right? 20 years of experience in the consumer products industry. You've helped brands exit their businesses. You've helped, provide consulting services to actually grow businesses to a point of where they're actually ready to be sold. And so I love that you've kind of you've seen the full spectrum of e-commerce brands. So Chris, one thing I want to just kind of start the conversation off with is, what do you see going on in the market right now? There's been news of bankruptcies with some of the Amazon aggregators. What's going on in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a little bit, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, there's no told you so. There's no, hey, we said this, we said that. Look, when we first saw the run up of aggregators, we thought, okay, nothing's new under the sun. There's aggregation that occurs in a lot of different sectors and in different cycles in the past and M&A cycles. United Rentals is probably one of the best aggregators that's ever existed. They've been gobbling up all types of local businesses for the past almost 25 to 30 years and set aside cash every year to acquire. And so we thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. We had some hesitation because we thought aggregating a very siloed company, that's hard to do, right? When you're trying to aggregate and then create effective efficiencies and economies of scale, it just doesn't work for Amazon businesses, no matter how you slice it. And so we thought, okay, well, there's been a lot of cash that's raised. The expectation was we're going to buy these things for as cheap as possible. We're going to build an army of brands, quote unquote, and then we're going to wrap and we're going to IPO. I mean, that was the PowerPoint that raised all the money, right? And so venture, which tends to see or get more comfortable with riskier investments, you saw a lot of venture debt come in. That's number one. And you did see some institutional guys come in. They drank, I wouldn't say they drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, look, consumer products had a massive run up. Our entire economy flipped on its head. We were always 2/3 service and 1/3 consumer. And we became a 2/3 consumer economy and a 1/3 service because of COVID, right? Because of the pandemic. And so, a lot of big institutional minds were going, this is here to stay. Like, McKinsey came out with that report that everyone shared, showing that, hey, the compound effect of this over the course, specifically with e-commerce, over the course of the next 10 years, we've grown 7 years in, 3 months, basically. So there were a lot of these bullet points. People kind of all, again, I don't want to say drink the Kool-Aid because that's a negative way of saying it, but a lot of folks rode the wave. And because of that, you had a lot of people going, it's a lot of copycats, basically. Hey, if they can do it, I can do it. I can do it better. And I can do it better. And then you had 100 voices all screaming, I can do it better. And in the process, you actually flipped the PowerPoint on its head, because the whole idea was to buy for here and sell for here. And you were buying for here, and now you're liquidating here. And so you've effectively had a complete cycle shift away from the original concept. And now it's just moving into a very normalized view of where consumer products is right now. And then when you get very granular and you look at Amazon in particular, you go, well, this is where it really was pre-pandemic. We're kind of back to where we were. You want to sell your Amazon business almost no matter the size, unless you are huge. We'll get to that in a moment, because you've got real market share. You've got real critical mass. You're selling for a 3 to 4 multiple all day long, man. And now, unfortunately, if you've reached a specific size, your buyer pool has actually skinnied up significantly. And so if you're a $1, $2, $3 million business up to 5, you can still utilize the SBA loan. There's some really great guys, even in the eComm space, that are doing that. One guy, his name is Steven Spear. He's been doing this for years and years and years. And he's still helping, eComm brands, and buyers find eComm brands, but it's just cycled back to where it was before. So the state of the market is, you've got to now really think about your company in a much different way. You've got to really, if you want to exit the business, and let's just take the exit piece out, but you really want to capitalize and become a brand that is going to have real sustainability, you got to start looking at a lot of other things. And that's acquisition channels and it's sales channels. And that is not an easy, it's very easy to say. It's actually quite easy to put on paper, just kind of like the aggregator model. Much, much, much different thing to execute. And to be very frank, there are a lot of folks who can succeed on Amazon that fail to succeed outside of Amazon. It's not an easy route.
Interesting. Well, and I think that's what I would love to dive into is, what is it that, brands could consider getting into if it's outside of Amazon? And also, as you talked about how the buyer pool for these businesses is shrinking. So a couple questions I want to ask you is, A, what makes a brand more attractive to the limited pool of buyers that are there? Mm-hmm. And then number 2, how do we dive into, building a brand that is more attractive?
Look, I'd say for an all Amazon business, that's, call it, call it 1 to 10 million, right? That's, again, kind of selling to that limited buyer pool. The disciplines haven't changed. A lot of business brokers you'll hear, and rightfully so, they'll focus on trailing 12-month profitability. That's really just an instrument to show that the company has been a profitable business. What types of protections do you have and IP do you have around both your product and also, like, do you have a review moat? Are you where's your company going? Is it going up to the right? That's also very important. And then, of course, it's just really about, okay, I'm buying this. Where am I taking it? Right. And so the attractiveness of that, which is, hey, look, if you're just a really good cash flowing company, okay, great. Well, I know I'm buying something that I could probably bolt on a few other products to. I can continue to launch new product. I heard, Adam Heist was on your podcast. I love Adam. Yeah. And, he just said it the other day in one of his videos, when you're just purely selling on Amazon, man, it's like an ice cube, like it's constantly melting. And so if you look at it and go, okay, well, this is something I can consistently launch new products. Okay, that's a good discipline. That's a good discipline for me to invest in. So it's kind of the same, I'd say, level of discipline that's even been around for these same businesses for the past decade. Why am I buying it? But there's a huge discount, unfortunately, when it's something that has never had the proof of concept away from Amazon. That's number one. It doesn't have heavy product protection. And what I mean by that is real product roadmap, real design or utility patents on the product itself. And also I'm going to say you just know, because it's so subjective to say that, but you just know it's going to be really difficult to grab market share outside of Amazon, just period. So there's a real discount on all of that. And so, and again, it limits you to a specific multiple, but look, there's buyers out there that are happy to buy those companies all day long. There are corporate folks who left corporate America and are looking, they retired early, they got laid off, but they've got a really good IRA, which is also a good vehicle to purchase companies. They've got enough leverage, kind of personal wealth leverage, to get an SBA loan. And they're looking at it and they're modeling it out and going, I'm going to buy this for 3 multiple and I'm going to cash flow for the next 10 years. And I'm going to grow it nice and slow. And the SBA loan doesn't burden the business and I can make some money out of this thing. I mean, there's a real market for that. But it does play into my point. It's just it's just a limited buyer pool. That's it.
Fascinating. You mentioned, Adam Heist's comment that, your products on Amazon are kind of like a melting ice cube. I think that that's an important thing for a lot of our brand owners to understand. And why is that, Chris? Why is that statement true, that you launch a product on Amazon and it's essentially a melting ice cube? And what do you see? How does that play into, trying to build a brand on Amazon that's only focused on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very parallel to the product development process. Every product development process and every textbook that you've ever read about PD or NPD has a bell curve to it, right? And that's essentially a melting ice cube, right? And so the principle is fairly identical. Where I believe it tends to play out faster on Amazon is because majority of the products that are sold are not brand driven, and they're driven more or less to resolve for white space and less to resolve for a problem, which is typically what brings sustainability of an actual product that also plays into my brand story and my brand narrative and makes something super sticky for a guy like you and I to go back and buy over and over and over again, right? I think that plays a bigger role where, again, you're just kind of going, and we've all listened to the same content. And by the way, it's great content. Like it's great for people who just want to do this, right? Which is, here's the trick. You go to Helium 10, identify these keywords that are not, go to Google, find the keyword trends that are now at, it's like finding an altcoin, man. Altcoin that's at like 10 cents right now. And you read a little bit about the project behind it and you're like, this thing's going to be $1 in 2 years. I'm going to buy 1 million of them and I'm going to be very wealthy over time. It's, it's that same kind of mentality where it's like, I'm going to research the keywords that people are searching for, and then I'm going to resolve for the trend or the keyword. I'm not actually resolving for a consumer problem. The iPhone, everybody uses Apple as an example, but the iPhone resolved for a phone problem, right? It brought the computer to the telephone and it became your all-in-one, and they just absolutely and I can do everything here, but they resolve for a lot of different, whether it's problems or just inconveniences. And that takes real product development when you're thinking about that. That's when you get utility patents introduced. It's when you get design patents introduced. And I'd say the other way to not be a melting ice cube, we'll get into this later, is I've got a lot of activity away from Amazon that's driving people to Amazon. We see that with a lot of with the brands that we're working with. One in particular in the beauty space is driving a very nice Amazon business, but that's because they're driving a really great meta strategy right now. And so, and look, at the end of the day, Amazon's a marketplace of convenience, man. Like, I go there because I want the thing in 2 days. I can trust that it's going to come either in a day or 2 days or 3 hours. And I just would rather order there than on their Shopify website. Although there's things that are happening in the Shopify world that are making it way more friendlier. Like, Shopify is moving to one-page cart here very shortly, which is very different than what they've had in the past. Shop has made it easy. And then, of course, they're getting Shopify, BigCommerce, and these platforms are working with 3PLs to try and become much more friendlier when it comes to getting product a lot faster, et cetera. But you get my point. So, yeah. But that's why it becomes a melting ice cube. So you're just stuck in a place where it's fine. This is not a bad methodology, by the way. Like, there's no good or bad here. It's just the result is very different, right? When I'm just constantly launching new products, but they're going really well and I'm cash flowing a lot of money. Great, man. The end result, the end is very different than the end over here, where I'm applying, real conviction, real discipline into a brand that I'm growing to be very prolific, and as prolific as I can make it. Because that's the value driver for someone to go, yep, that makes a lot of sense for me.
I love that. And I think that our listeners, want that, right? I think all of us deep down, we want to have that, house name brand, right? That people, actually care about, because you're right. On Amazon, half the people never even know who they're purchasing from. And most of the time they just think they're buying it from Amazon. I can't tell you the number of people that buy our products. They get it and they see a picture of our family on the insert card, right? And they're like, I had no idea. And it's like, oh, how do you not see it? Like, our branding is all over the place on Amazon, but it's just not there. Yeah. So Chris, I would love to pivot our conversation at this point. Like, I've drank your Kool-Aid at this point of I've got to get my brand to be more omni-channel. Yeah. I need to make sure that I'm not just creating this melting ice cube, that Amazon's getting more and more overseas competitors every day. Mm-hmm. It's a race to the bottom right now.
It is a rat race.
And ultimately, I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, the people that will win on Amazon are going to be the people that are driving external traffic in other ways, right? They're promoting their products to Shopify or their own carts or their own retail strategy. And it's trickling over, like you mentioned, onto Amazon just because people are aware of the brand itself. Yeah. And it's no longer this arbitrage of keywords and PPC clicks. I think that's going to be a very small portion of the market 5 to 10 years from now. So
totally.
I guess that's my question for you, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, look,
if a brand owner, how do we scale?
It's you got several days. I mean, look, the other thing to think about too, I'm having some singles, kind of some quick hits, and then we'll get into some of the more like, triples and doubles here a little bit later. But I mean, even just hearing what you're saying, reading Kevin King's newsletter recently, where, he's been doing a lot of deep diving into the new search engine that's about to come out. And I think they announced some things that accelerate around this as well, where it's a bit more like predictive in nature and less about the keywords and more about, I know you as a consumer, I know what you should be buying. Well, that's always been happening, but that's just now as smart as it will ever be. And the other thing we can't forget, we tend to get into a very myopic view that Amazon is this static thing and that it's just kind of Amazon, and everything that goes on around it. It's just like, well, we don't really pay attention to it. TikTok is about to revolutionize how you purchase product. 125 million %. It is going to be very interesting to see what happens in this quarter, because they are coming after the jugular of Amazon. No question. Zero question. So as a business owner, you've got to start thinking about those things when it's like, well, what does a TikTok strategy look like? Well, that's heavily doused in influencers and in your own videos and getting as many affiliates as you can to drink that Kool-Aid because you're offering them, actual cash to sell the product. And it's going to be a lot more of that. And I'm telling you, they're making it, they have a relationship with ShipBob. We have we have 3 clients right now, actually going through the process of getting on a TikTok shop. It's not easy. It has been one of the hardest things I've actually seen a client have to do. But
why is that?
There's a lot of, it's a lot of red tape to get there. There's a lot of it's a longer application. There's a ton of application. It's like basically bottleneck. So it's a lot of more administrative why it's been so hard. And then also, I want to say they only have a relationship with ShipBob. So like, I don't think you can actually ship from your own 3PL just yet. I think you have to do it through ShipBob. I think I could be wrong in that. So I'll circle back with you after the podcast to put in the show notes. Chris was actually wrong. ChatGPT was right again. So anyways, that's just a kind of a quick hit that I was thinking about. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, when you're really thinking about, and your business owner is going, okay, well, how do I actually scale from here? How do I grow from here? Well, look, when you started your company, you said, I'm going to just go to Amazon. It was all about Amazon and less about product in most cases. And again, I'm also speaking from having talked to a lot of founder owners that have Amazon businesses. So it's not like I'm just throwing this out of, thin air or some hat. This is coming from some real context. But it's more like, hey, I'm just going to go find a product. I'm going to sell that widget through Amazon. That's kind of what it's been. And there's been more strategy and more resources deployed around how I'm going to get the widget at a cost that's going to convert the consumer and hack my way into being on page 1 as fast as possible and finding the honey holes and reservoirs to quick growth, quick hits, right? And I think you're shaking your head because, yes, we all hear the same type of content and have been hearing this for many, many years. And if you really want to now grow and scale your company away from this sales channel, which my friend Ben Leonard, who I don't know if you've met him or not, says
he'll be actually coming on the podcast a few episodes after you. So
sweet. He says it so eloquently. Amazon is just a sales channel. And so when you're thinking about your channel expansion and your channel strategy, you've got to sit down and go, number one, with my product, can I actually do it? And you got to have the hard conversation with yourself. Because just because you made it on Amazon doesn't mean that that you're going to actually be able to drive a lot of consumers to a website to convert. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A, you may have been in part of that rat race and almost commoditized your product. And so it just doesn't make a lot of economic sense. I mean, to be honest with you, CAC away from Amazon, cost to acquire the consumer away from Amazon, and AOV. I mean, look, man, you're talking $20 to $30 to acquire at least when you're optimized.
At least, right?
Yeah. And you're talking AOVs have to be well north of that, at least double that. But then your LTV has to be about triple that. So like, I've got to have something that either on my first handshake, I'm very profitable and I'm really profitable, or I can afford to acquire the consumer at $40 or $30, knowing that my LTV is $180. Yeah. And so these metrics now matter. You've got to really think through that. So how do you think through that? What are the ways to think through all of that? Well, number one, you always start with your product. You're a consumer products company. So do I have something that people will want to come back and buy over and over again? Is my product good quality? Do I have something that is highly protected and highly defendable and really truly differentiates myself over the next guy? Because on D2C, I can't hack my way to conversion. Like, I've got to be really good at selling my product. And if you don't have a whole lot of bullets in the chamber to sell the product, well, you're going to drive a lot of traffic and they're going to go, yeah, I'm good. This is cheap. This is not something for me. Like, I'll just go find it on Amazon. and if I'm just that customer trying to find cheap, I'm just going to find it on Amazon. But there's so many other things you have to deploy to get people in that mindset of thinking about you as a brand. And so there's a lot of ways you also have to reach that particular consumer. So then it's about the acquisition strategy, right? So I look at it and I go, well, where can I expand? Is it D2C? Is it retail? What retail? But then you also have to go, do I have the actual product? Is the product ready for both D2C and retail? And then you got to think about all the acquisition channels. So if you tick those boxes, you say, yes, I've got the product, I can afford this, knowing that actually CAC is not going to be 30. It's more going to be like 100 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a minute. So you got to model all that out and be prepared for it. Then you've got to really go, okay, if I tick those boxes, now I've got to start thinking about, well, where are the acquisition channels I want to spend time in? And what are the acquisition channels that are really going to drive the best traffic, and thinking about that marketing mix. And I want to say one thing, and I'm saying a lot, so bear with me. Not every marketing mix is the same. What works for one person is not going to work for another person. And that's the other mentality, because Amazon is a very templatized type of approach. If I do X and Y, it will always equal A. Away from Amazon, I could go through all 4 of our clients right now that we currently work with, and every single one of them has seen success through different acquisition channels. And each one of them have a very different story. There's elements and threads that are very familiar and similar. It's not one size fits all.
Interesting. Well, Chris, I would love to. So let's kind of take this chunk by chunk here. Okay. So we've got a brand. We want to 10x our brand. Okay. We know that Amazon, we need to see Amazon more as our sales channel instead of the only sales channel, right? We have an Amazon brand. I think that people need to, if you really want to grow and scale a brand, you've got to stop thinking of yourself as an Amazon brand. So then you have to start thinking like, okay, what are other channels that I could get my product distributed or sold to, right? So you mentioned TikTok Shop, you've got Walmart, you've got Etsy, and then now you've got Temu and Shein and some of those other guys, right? So those would be like kind of third-party marketplaces. Then you've got your own D2C website, whether it be WooCommerce, Shopify. Okay, D2C, that's where your customer acquisition cost, that CAC is going to be pretty darn high, $100 just to bring somebody in. And then secondly, or lastly, I guess you've got retail, right? Wholesaling your product into retail stores. And so, Chris, I guess the question would be, you've got a successful Amazon seller, we'll say, okay, they've hit the 7 figures on Amazon. So out of all these channels, where would you recommend somebody starts? Or does this all go back to the earlier point that you made, that it's like everybody's different and it's always a unique approach?
So I would say it's a bit of mixture. It's a mixture of both. So yes, I would peanut butter that everything's different and it's always a unique approach. You know, the easiest thing for an Amazon seller to do, or someone who's traditionally sold only on Amazon, the easiest thing for them to do is to go to what I would call the next concentric circle, which is other marketplaces. That's simple, right? Walmart's starting to act very much like Amazon. It's growing like crazy. I still have not seen the results that everyone's been shouting. It's still very much a small percentage in comparison to Amazon, but it is growing. There's a lot more sellers there. I just think Walmart still has a ways to go to become more friendlier for a lot of Amazon sellers. Their AOV is less than $30. And if you don't have Walmart Plus, which a lot of people don't have Walmart Plus, you and I both have Amazon Prime. You and I'm guessing I don't have Walmart Plus. I'm guessing you don't have it either.
No.
Well, there you go. I know it's anecdotal and it's a stupid stat, but it's something, right? Well, if you buy anything less than $30, you get charged $8 for shipping on Amazon or on Walmart. So they're in a little bit of I think that's why you're seeing a lot of sellers going, hey, I put my stuff on Amazon or Walmart, put my stuff on Walmart, and I'm not really seeing the sales that everyone else is screaming. It's mainly that reason. But it's easy. Like going on eBay is easy. And you can even, utilize software like Channel Advisor to go into Newegg and Rakuten and all these other different types of marketplaces all over the world if you wanted to. That's an easy next concentric circle for a lot of folks who are traditionally on Amazon. But if you want to start now thinking about the other concentric circles that you just mentioned, I would say even TikTok Shop. I mean, unless you can get really clever with your content around your product, then you're just going to really struggle to sell, because if you're just showing a video of something that feels very commoditized and it's not a great price point, you're probably just going to be spinning a lot of tires on TikTok. But who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Like, again, I'm not claiming that whatever I am saying is like gospel. It's who knows? You could have a great experience, but typically what you find, I bought an external monitor from TikTok Shop, right? Like this thing just sets up next to my computer. It was $95, and like my TikTok was just flooded with their videos and easy videos like, hey, do you go to different work? Do you go to Starbucks to work and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, boom, want that. Right. So even though it's a little bit more commoditized, they did a clever video nailing their consumer. So I'd say that concentric circle would be like TikTok shop. And then of course, I think the next and things like that, I'd say the next concentric circle would be D2C. And that's a much harder go. That's everything we talked about earlier. So I would also put this in a hierarchy of difficulty, right? Kind of as you were talking through it. And then I think the final piece of difficulty is wholesale. Fair makes it super easy for anybody to sell their product. And, it operates very similar to a marketplace. It's very much low touch. You have to have some level of customer support, some level of sales support, but very minimal. Yeah. But you're not going, you're only going to do, I don't know who you've spoken to about Fair as you've been consulting with folks. I've never seen it go. I've only talked to one person where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing millions through Fair.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody just like revolutionize their business. And now they are all in on the whole wholesale.
Yeah. And so exactly. And you mentioned Etsy, even though it is a marketplace. So I would also put, Macy's and Home Depot and all those marketplaces. But then, so you're getting to TikTok, and then you get to, you get to D2C, and then with retail, Fair. And then that's when I think rubber starts to hit the road, man. That's when you feel the brakes, I think, a lot harder in that circle, because you really have, if you really want to be in retail, how do you define that? I define it by being in a retail environment like a Best Buy, a Kohl's, a Target, a Walmart, Bye Bye Baby is making a comeback, any of these types of retail environments. I just talked to somebody this morning about this. You can get online, Target Plus, even though that's a very weird thing going on at Target Plus right now. You have to have at least 100 SKUs and still a buying process. And it's just, they don't have their act together yet. They're much more liberal on their website. You want to get in their store, that buyer only has this much space for you. And that space has been allocated for so many dollars per store per week, and so much profitability per store per week. And the buyer is heavily graded and judged. Literally, their bonus is judged on their planogram and the program that they've put in for their particular category or subcategory. So you better have something that everybody stinking wants. And by the way, it's not commodity, because that's why they have their private label brands. They just take all commodity and just say, I'll make it myself. Like, I don't need your commodity. That's awesome that you've got 55,000 reviews. But if I'm just making something that's $20, I'll just do it my own brand. And I'll make way more money than just putting your stuff in here for that type of product. But if I'm really going to buy into something new for this shelf, oh, buddy, you better come heavily packed with some data. You better have some unbelievable innovation or branding that just knocks people's socks off, packaging that is just out of this world. That's the hardest concentric circle. And you know what? Some of your listeners may even refute what I'm saying and say, well, I got into Target stores, and it's like, I'd love to talk to you. How long did it last? Why? Yeah. What were the conversations? What were the basis for why you got there? You find very, 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 we have one client we work with that the Target buyer actually reached out to them, but that's because they nailed it with branding. Like, they're one of the most well-branded clients I've ever worked with, period, end of story. I'll share it with you later and you'll go, oh, wow, I get it. But that's, amazing. Again, that's the exception, not the norm. So,
yeah. So with that being said, and I think with retail, I think it's important for people to understand, like, retail is definitely a totally different beast. A couple things for anyone to consider, even just going on to Fair. I know that there are other people's business models where they will go acquire your product on Fair and then go flip it on Amazon. So you need to be, you're only kind of creating some competition for yourself in your own buy box. When you do that, that's one consideration. And then number two, if you want to get into these big box stores, you need to start, like, the amount of capital starts to change, right? Because you're going to be sending in thousands of units. You have to upfront all the inventory. And then guess what? If it doesn't sell, you eat all of that inventory back, right? Because this retail game is not an easy, hey, once I get in, the coast is clear. You've got to be paying, for slotting fees, which means where is my product being located? Is it on the bottom shelf? Or am I sitting in the prime spot in the middle? You're paying for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Just like you pay for Amazon ads. If you want to show up top of the page, it's more expensive.
That's right.
You could go on, but I think our sellers need to understand, like, it's a different ball game. You need to have a very good strategy.
You do.
Like we've all learned about Amazon, you've got to invest all that same amount of time, or even better, partner with somebody like yourself that's kind of been there, done that, and has the who's, right, that know how to get things done.
Yep, that's right.
So
I agree with everything you said. I mean, look, bottom line, this is on average. So again, this is just average, 3 years to get profitable in retail, and expect 0.5 ROAS year one. That's good. That's actually really, really good, because it takes so much to get the brand sticky inside of a program and planogram to give you the opportunity to land, expand. That's what they talk about a lot in retail: land, expand, and then sustain. So that modeling means that there's a lot of investment in CapEx that goes into year 1 and 2. And then in year 3, you start to feel the relief. And then year 4, 5, yeah, I mean, dude, you're adding so much more. At that point, you're a prolific company. Yeah. And, you don't have to do as much to drive the consumer to the store. Take a look at someone like Manscaped. That's somebody who went into retail and had a wonderful D2C business, and Target pursued them, and they went into Target exclusively. And we know the logistics company that manages all of their logistics. It's actually one of our clients that we're taking to market, and the law of average is very real. We'll leave it there. It's even if you've become somewhat of a strong brand on Amazon. Let's just say it's Amazon, and you go, because there have been brands that have gone from Amazon to to retail. Again, we pick on them. Because there's only about 3 that have actually done it really successfully. But even with someone that's been a prolific, people know who they are, going into retail is still, there's so much you nailed it, dude. You nailed it with the slotting fees, and you nailed it. Just, there's so much program and return percentage, and about upfront, you upfront everything, and it's 90-day terms. Yeah. Like, so I'm buying the product.
You're not getting paid forever. Yeah.
You're not, typically you're not getting paid for 6 months. From the time that I put the order in with the factory, I've got to hold that cash flow for 6 months. So that's honestly where great ABLs come in, and short-term, PO factoring. It plays a really good role with brands that are just new to retail. Yeah. It's actually a really good way to go, because you're like, screw it, I'm not going to be that profitable anyways. I might as well take a loan to make sure that this thing gets really, really off the ground.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating. I mean, you talked about how you're not going to be profitable for 3 years. You're at 0.5%, as your ROAS, 0.5 ROAS. I think an Amazon seller listening to this, I think they lost their mind. They're like, their jaw hit the floor. They're like, are you kidding me? Because on Amazon, we're expecting 5, 10 ROAS. And if it's not there, we're starting to shut down campaigns, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a different animal.
It is.
Chris, I would love to dive into maybe some case studies that you might have, brands that you've worked with, just to kind of, I think the hard part is we can't lay out a clear path to say, well, take your brand, then go here, do X, Y, and Z, and then you're just going to 10x your growth. I think what we've talked about is, here are all of the additional like growth levers that you could potentially pull upon to grow your brand to 10x. But it's going to require some testing. And I think that's the most important thing you need to do, is always be testing different offers, different marketplaces, D2C, even experiment with some retail to see what gets you going. So, Chris, I would love to hear what you've seen other brands succeed with, fail at. How do they pivot?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot of what we discussed. I mean, you got to start somewhere. And I think a lot of the frustration and tension comes in when you and I are having this discussion and someone hears it and they go, well, I want to be that concentric circle, that final concentric circle tomorrow. And it's like, no, man, that takes a long time. And it's building blocks. It's building on other things, on other things, on other things. And again, it goes back to what we said earlier. Both directions or paths are not wrong or right. They just have different results and the end looks very different. And so if you want to choose this path to, I really want to 10X, I want to grow, I want to be more prolific, I want to have channel expansion and diverse channels and diverse acquisition channels. I want to start owning my own data. And eventually I'd love to get into retail and be an extremely valuable asset to a strategic who goes, holy cow, like I have to buy you. That's the other side. This is a very minute point, but everybody who's in retail and, actual retail shelves, everybody's reading the data, the IRI, the FDMX, the Nielsen data, and they're seeing week by week who's starting to gain actual market share. And that's where corporate strategics, that's all they're doing. And if you're eating someone's lunch in a category, that's where you sell for, who is the Amazon brand, the beauty brand that sold to Church and Dwight?
I don't know if it was it. I don't know. Well, you have native deodorant sold. You have Zesty Paws, right?
Then there's a third, and it'll come to me later. It was but they sold for like, oh gosh, 650 million. But again, it's because they moved out. They have the concentric circles, and they found themselves in an extremely valuable spot to Church and Dwight, who's a huge private equity fund that buys and holds, to be frank, all these consumer product brands. And so what do I say to somebody who's like, I want to do this and I want to kind of go, look, you highlighted a lot of things. I think it is first off, you gotta have a plan, man. I don't know how else to say it, right? You got to put together a plan. You got to put together a business plan. Where am I going to go first? How am I going to fund these things? Like I said, there's what I would call singles and doubles and triples and then home runs. And there's a lot of singles when you've been an Amazon brand because you've got the domain expertise to go into other marketplaces and crush. But there's a ceiling, right? But in aggregate, it can actually bring some decent cash flow to your company to then fund the next level of growth, which is typically direct to consumer. But you got to have a very good, solid, thorough plan on how am I going to achieve direct to consumer. We talked about it earlier. Can I afford the CAC? Do I have the product and product development to actually achieve what I want to achieve out of growth for this particular channel? What are the acquisition channels I'm going to test, right? A big thing that's occurring right now is customers selling your product, consumers selling your product, UGC, OGC, I call it owner generated content, where the owner is kind of the face of the brand, user generated content. They're actually the ones selling the product on your behalf. That's a big thing right now. And that's actually doing really well. Well, 5 years ago, that wasn't a thing. So following trend, testing the trend for your brand, to your point, taking, 10% of your budget and applying it to just pure. This is best practices for Meta. You always have 10% of your budget where you're using and just testing different method, testing different offers, landing pages. That's something that you're not used to with Amazon. Landing pages are everything. Deploying different potential strategies. Take Cole and Broom, for instance. They grew exponentially because they created a very sophisticated quiz. They drove all of their acquisition, or paid traffic to this quiz. They went, consumer goes to the quiz, and at the end you get hit with a drip campaign of 8 different emails, and they saw their conversion go up almost like 300% just by deploying this as a strategy. Does that work for everybody? No, it doesn't. So let's go back to your point. Like, what's my plan? What's the acquisition channels? How am I testing? And then also, I'm now going to layer in the reason why I'm going to believe that I've got what I would consider a really good plan is because now I've also brought in these experts to help me. And I brought in these people who done that, built a t-shirt, et cetera. So what you asked for case study, this is where we've seen success. We've seen this with success with our clients. We have one client that's in the custom rug business. In order for them to scale and grow, 2 things: had to get the operations perfect. Spent 2 years doing that. Started getting actual strategic bids from which I can't say on the podcast, but real strategic, big players. And is now ready to actually 10X. And we have worked with them. The new director of marketing came from Big Green Egg, worked in the automotive industry, big mind, big thinker, we've been talking to him today at 2:00. Just incredible strategy for now taking the brand from 10 million to 35, 40 million. The operations can handle it. So they've got the operational leverage now, and you're putting the right people in place just to absolutely go bananas. And so, yeah, I'm rambling, dude, because I could talk about this for days and days and days. But yes, I mean, if I were to boil it down in a more simplistic way, it's thinking about those concentric circles have real business plans to them. One thing can lead to another. You want to have building blocks that build on each other, because I don't necessarily need to rebrand for D2C or the other marketplaces, but I might need to rebrand or refresh for retail. That's happening to one of our clients right now. Wonderful branding. When we came in, we even said, look, you've got really good branding. But then when we brought, a best in class retail consultant, and we're working to get into Sephora or Ulta and Target, we're now working with a branding agency who's done a lot of work with, big beauty brands. And we're going through a refresh, both positioning, messaging, and packaging, because now I got to talk to the consumer in a different way when I go into retail. It's got to be quick. And I can't look like anybody else.
Makes a lot of sense. Chris, we could certainly go on for the next 10 hours. You 100%. And I just discussing different strategies and things we could dive into. So Chris, I'm going to wrap things up here and then let you kind of add on anything you think I forgot. But I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from each episode. So here are the 3 that I've kind of noted. And then Chris, you let me know if you think I'm missing something. So action item number 1, if an Amazon seller wants to 10x their brand and they want to be seen as that like household brand name, you want to go, sell your brand for $100 million plus. The first step in action item I would take, if you're not on multiple marketplaces, that's your lowest hanging fruit right now. Go expand, go copy and paste, and go get yourself on all the other marketplaces. Okay, we talked about Etsy, we talked about Walmart, we talked about, Newegg and Rakuten. Okay, now is that going to be game-changing amounts of money? No, but it starts to add up, right? It's going to be that little snowball. Imagine getting 5% of your current sales from Amazon, but on each of those different platforms, right? And it can start to layer up. So that would be action item number 1. That's something you can do with an existing team that you have in place now. Action item number 2, this is where things need to get a little bit more serious, is open up a D2C channel. And I would also kind of correlate, maybe TikTok shop in this as well, where you kind of start experimenting with influencers, affiliates that are going to drive traffic to either if they're on TikTok, then it's going to be to your TikTok shop. If it's off of TikTok, then you're going to be driving it to your D2C website.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think at the end of the day, you just need to see this as I'm going to throw a bunch of crap at the wall and I'm going to see what, if anything, I can get to stick. But knowing that this is not going to be an easy play, you're going to have to test. And just because somebody's doing an XYZ funnel and their ad looks this way, that doesn't mean you can go copy and paste that and it would, do wonders for your own
That's
brand.
right.
Which leads me to my third and final action item is find the who and don't worry about the how. I think that so many of us that have grown our e-commerce business on Amazon, we are so used to, I purchased this course, I followed the course, I made millions of dollars. And I think all of that kind of goes out the window when you need to start focusing on D2C. Now, are there courses that teach you how to, create your own Shopify store and all that stuff?
Totally.
There certainly are. But if you've already got $1 million plus business on Amazon, you've got the funds and you can go a lot faster if you go find the right who's. And, Chris, that's why you mentioned it's not necessarily you. You are not the person I'd go to say, hey, what's the right meta strategy for me? But you know the right who's, the right who's to get me into retail, the right who's to help me rebrand so that I do look better for a potential exit down the road.
That's right.
Chris, anything else you would add to that?
No, I think you nailed it. The only thing I would probably add is on action step number 2, there are really great BI tools and attribution tools that help you keep discipline and guardrails in your spend. So you can do what they call agile testing, which is it's a little bit like kind of carpet bombing, but it's lots of testing, stop and analyze. Lots of testing, stop, analyze. And then I also, to that point, find someone who's actually, it's going to be a big word. So I don't want it to be interpreted like this is a super expensive. You can find someone on an hourly basis, a good data scientist who can actually read your data from these acquisition channels and with this attribution tools, and can tell you what is your data saying to you. We do a lot of that with our clients, and they obviously find that to be not only valuable, but they appreciate that.
Yeah. Awesome. Great insights. Chris, this has been an amazing conversation.
Agreed.
As we wrap it all up here, I've got to ask you my 3 final questions that I like to ask every guest. So the first one is, what is the most influential book that you've read and why?
You know what? You had Michael Gerber on here, and I have to say he's either a close, E-Myth was a close second or maybe even tied for number 1. But look, Good to Great, man. It was the first business book I ever read back in 2000, and like the year it came out. And Jim Collins is just such an influential mind in not only leadership, but just how business owners should be thinking about their own company. And I use the bus analogy almost every day. And my business partner, Jason, is extremely tired of hearing it. But I
get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
Right people, right seats. And your plan is, in fact, I kind of I've created some addendums to it. You know, the driver is your actual strategic plan and blah, blah, blah. So
I love it. Chris, second question here. What is a new productivity tool or software tool that you've recently discovered that you think is going to be a game changer?
You know, I'll go back to those attribution tools. We've been doing a lot with Northbeam, and while it's more for, I'd say, media buyers, Northbeam has been a wonderful attribution tool. Second to that, I have to say it, there's a BI tool, because that plays a bit of a separate role. It gives you a lot more insights into your particular customer, the traffic that's coming to the site. It's called Source Medium. Phenomenal. Like, we love those guys, super, super smart guys who develop this software. And we always recommend that a client has both, because when you have both, you have a more comprehensive view and read on what's happening. Where's my attribution? Where's the conversion really coming from? It lists everything on Northbeam. Amazing. And then for those who are coming, like, we look at a lot of cohorts, right? And so it's like, well, let's analyze this particular cohort data. What's the type of customer that's landing on this landing page versus this landing page? And you can do you get where I'm going. It's Source Medium and Northbeam, two great tools.
I love that. All right, Chris, third and final question. Who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
Rick Watson, no question. The guy is, like you and I spoke, man, the guy is just super nice, super humble. But, you know, I'd say aside from that, very insightful and thorough and thoughtful in what he types as far as posts on LinkedIn. And then he does a podcast. It's like a 20-minute podcast where he recaps kind of what's happened the week before. I get a lot of my news from him, man, because like you and I, right, every day we're distracted, whether it's business, family, kids, activities, etc. And I really appreciate like loading up LinkedIn and Rick posts something where I'm like, boom, I love that. And just, again, really, really good e-commerce insights. I think, like I was telling you earlier, it's not as much Amazon as more like direct to consumer omnichannel, but I think for this audience, it's a great person to follow.
I love that. That's a new name we haven't heard before. So people need to go follow Rick Watson. I appreciate the new recommendation.
Yeah,
Chris.
Absolutely.
Now, Chris, if people want to follow you along, tell us a little bit more about GW Partners and South Col.
Yeah, I'll be succinct. You know, GW Partners gets involved as early as possible as you've listened through the podcast to help affect every function of the business and optimize it for a sale on your time and for the valuation that you want. So instead of this noise and message of sell, 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 now let's take a few steps back. Are you even ready to sell? What's your goals? Let's create a plan to get towards your goals. Let's deploy the right people on the bus, wrong people off the bus, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually we sell your company. I mean, we still do that. We've been doing that for 6 years in this particular e-commerce consumer product space, and we'll be doing it for a long time. But we sell your company. But what we're doing now is a bit more of a hybrid model where we're wanting to get involved as early as possible. On South Col, it's very similar, but we are equity stakeholders in the business. We take minority equity, usually less than 50%, actually a lot less than that, but that's the pure definition of minority equity. We capitalize the business through our joint venture with Sellers Fi. And then, we both get the company ready for sale through all the work that we do with GW and also with Escala, who those boys very well. It's not boys, huge team. And then we resource the company as well with Multiply Me. So I would say the biggest difference is equity versus, do you just want more of a traditional kind of consulting M&A relationship?
Awesome. I love it. Well, Chris, I appreciate your insights that you shared with us. You dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on us today. Lots to digest from this episode. So thanks again for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.